Woman brings lover to divorce hearing. And the judge does something no one expected. Jessica Wilson never imagined that would be the day to change everything. At 48, she had planned every detail of that morning like an executive plans an important presentation. Only this time the goal was different. She wanted everyone to see that she had moved on, that she was no longer that fragile woman who accepted crumbs of attention. That's when she walked into the courtroom with Nathan Cooper by her side. The man in the yellow suit smiled confidently, holding her hand as if they were heading to a social event. Across the room, Michael Wilson felt his stomach churn at the sight. "Good morning, Your Honor," Jessica said to the judge, her voice steady and rehearsed. "This is Nathan, my partner." Michael lowered his head, his hands trembling slightly on the table. 23 years of marriage reduced to that moment of public humiliation. He hadn't expected that even after everything. The judge, Judge Richard Thompson, a man with graying hair and a piercing gaze, merely nodded. His eyes, however, lingered a few seconds longer on Nathan, as if trying to remember something. "We may begin," said the judge, adjusting his glasses. Jessica's lawyer, attorney Sarah Mitchell, stood up immediately, her briefcase full of documents. She was a young, ambitious woman who saw in this case an opportunity to prove herself. "Your Honor, my client dedicated over 2 decades to the marriage. She gave up her career, her personal ambitions, all for the sake of the family. Now she seeks only what is fair, half of the assets and alimony that guarantees the standard of living she is accustomed to." Michael felt like screaming. He knew that wasn't true, but how to prove it? How to explain years of silence, of ignored gestures, of unrequited love? "Is your client able to maintain my client in the standard she has always had?" continued the lawyer, looking at Michael with disdain. Nathan leaned in and whispered something in Jessica's ear, who smiled. That smile hurt Michael more than any words could. "Mr. Michael has a small auto repair shop," said attorney Sarah, as if that was something shameful. "My client needs assurances." Michael took a deep breath. His shop was more than small. It was the result of 30 years of honest work, starting as an apprentice when he was still a teenager. But there, in that room, it seemed like nothing he had built had any value. The judge flipped through some papers and then looked at Michael. "Are you represented?" Michael nodded and pointed to the lawyer beside him, attorney Robert Miller, a simple man who practiced in the same neighborhood as the shop. "Your Honor, my client only wants a fair division," said attorney Robert, his voice calm but unsure. He wasn't used to cases of that magnitude. "Fair," repeated Jessica, her voice echoing through the room. "I spent the best years of my life in that marriage. I cooked, cleaned, took care of everything while he spent the whole day at the shop. And now he wants to leave me with nothing." Jessica's words were calculated, each syllable a stab. Michael knew she was exaggerating, but how to contradict her? How to explain that those hours at the shop were to give her and the children a better life? "My client has evidence," said attorney Sarah, handing a thick folder to the judge. "Receipts, expenses, everything documented. She supported that household while he barely contributed." Nathan touched Jessica's shoulder, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by anyone. Michael clenched his fists under the table. The judge began to leaf through the documents slowly. Jessica watched his every move, confident. She had spent months organizing that folder, collecting every receipt she could find, arranging dates, creating a narrative that favored her. "It says here that you spent 15,000 rials on home renovations in May 2022, said the judge, holding up a sheet of paper. "That's correct, Your Honor," Jessica replied quickly. "The house was falling apart, and I had to use my savings." Michael opened his mouth to speak, but attorney Robert held his arm. "Let the judge finish," the lawyer whispered. But Michael couldn't stay quiet. That renovation had been his idea. He had done much of the work himself, saving money. How could she twist everything like that? And this one? The judge held up another document. 10,000 raise on furniture. Necessary, Your Honor. The house needed new furniture. Everything was old, broken. Nathan smiled discreetly, as if approving every word Jessica said. Michael felt nauseous. The hearing continued for a few more minutes, with attorney Sarah presenting more and more documents, building the image of a dedicated woman who had been neglected. Michael tried to concentrate, but his mind wandered to moments from the past. He remembered when he met Jessica, 25 years ago, at a 4th of July party in the neighborhood. She was different from the other girls, had a decisive way of speaking, didn't bow her head to anyone. He had fallen in love with her precisely because of her strength. But when had that strength turned into bitterness? When had love turned into indifference? "Your Honor," Attorney Sarah's voice brought him back to the present. "I ask that you consider not only the assets, but also lifelong alimony. My client is 48 years old and will have difficulty re-entering the job market." Michael finally reacted. "She has a beauty salon," he said, his voice louder than intended. Everyone turned to him. Jessica stared at him with narrowed eyes. "A salon that barely pays the bills," she replied coldly, "while you keep the profitable workshop." "Profitable?" Michael almost laughed. "I work 16 hours a day to keep that workshop running, you know that." "Ladies and gentlemen, please," the judge intervened, raising his hand. "Let's maintain order." Nathan leaned toward Jessica again, whispering something. Michael noticed the man was smiling as if it were all a fun game. Who was that man? Michael had discovered the affair 3 months ago, when he found messages on Jessica's phone. She didn't even try to deny it, just said she had found someone who valued her, who made her feel alive again. "Do you have anything to present in your defense?" asked the judge, looking at Michael. Attorney Robert pushed some papers forward. They were basic documents. The workshop deed, some bank statements, nothing very organized. "Your Honor, my client is a hard-working man. He built everything from scratch. The workshop was bought with his sweat." "With his sweat?" Jessica let out a dry laugh. "And who took care of the house? Who took care of the children when he was there getting greasy?" Michael felt the words like punches. Took care of the children? She had emotionally abandoned the children years ago, always busy with her own frustrations. But how to prove that? "Where are our children now, Jessica?" Michael asked, his voice trembling. "Why didn't they want to come today?" Jessica looked away for a second, but quickly regained her composure. "They're confused. You turned them against me." "Me?" Michael felt tears burning in his eyes. "I never spoke badly of you to them. Never." The judge gently tapped his gavel on the table. "We'll take a 15-minute break. Everyone must remain in the building." As people stood up, Michael remained seated, looking at his own hands. Calloused hands, with scars from burns and cuts from years of working with metal. Hands that had built everything they had. Jessica left the room arm in arm with Nathan, laughing at something he had said. Michael watched them leave, feeling a huge emptiness in his chest. Attorney Robert Miller sat down beside him. "We need more documents, Michael. She is very well prepared." "I have nothing, Counselor." Michael ran his hand over his face. "I never thought I'd need to prove that I worked for my family." "Do you have the shop's bank statements?" "Yes, but they show the business barely makes a profit. Every year I reinvest everything to keep it running. She knows that." Attorney Robert Miller sighed. "And the children, could they testify?" "I won't put Brandon and Emily in the middle of this." Michael shook his head. "They're already suffering too much." In the hallway, Nathan was leaning against the wall, talking on the phone. His voice echoed slightly, too confident. "Yes, everything is going as planned," he was saying. "In a few weeks, she will be financially secure. We'll see after that." A court employee, Mr. Stanley, who was organizing some files nearby, raised his eyebrows upon hearing that. He recognized that kind of conversation. He had seen similar things throughout his 40 years working there. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Jessica came out of the restroom and found Nathan still on the phone. He hung up quickly when he saw her approaching. "Is everything okay?" she asked, noticing something strange in his expression. "Everything's great, love." Nathan smiled, putting his arm around her waist. "Soon you'll be free from this burden." Jessica rested her head on his shoulder, feeling safe. Nathan was everything Michael had never been. Attentive, present, always saying the right words. He made her feel young again, desired. They had met 6 months ago at the salon where Jessica worked. Nathan showed up saying he needed a haircut for a job interview. They started talking and somehow the conversation flowed naturally. He was funny, smart, knew how to listen to her in a way Michael never did. "Are you okay?" Nathan asked, noticing she was quiet. "Just thinking about how different things would be if I had met you earlier," she sighed. "But you met me now, and now is what matters." Jessica smiled, but there was something in the back of her mind that bothered her. Something about the way Nathan always knew exactly what to say, as if every word was calculated. Inside the room, Michael remained seated, lost in thought. He remembered the day Brandon was born, 21 years ago. Jessica had had complications during childbirth, and he spent 17 hours outside the operating room, praying, begging for her to be okay. When they could finally see the baby, Jessica was exhausted but smiling. Michael held her hand and promised he would always take care of both of them. And he kept that promise, even when things got tough. 2 years later came Emily. Once again there were complications, and once again Michael was there, holding down the fort, working double shifts to pay the medical bills. Jessica spent months recovering, and he took on everything, the house, the kids, the work. But she didn't remember those things, or didn't want to remember. Attorney Robert Miller returned with 2 glasses of water. "Drink," he said, pushing one glass toward Michael. "You need to keep your head on straight." Michael obeyed, but the water tasted bitter. "Counselor, I'm going to lose everything, aren't I?" "Not if you have evidence. Do you have anything that actually shows her contributions?" Michael thought for a moment. "I have notes," he said slowly. "I kept them for years. Every gift I gave, every surprise I planned, every attempt to save our marriage. It's all in a notebook at home. Why didn't you bring it?" "Because it seems pathetic," Michael lowered his head. "A 49-year-old man keeping notes like a lovesick teenager." "Michael, nothing is pathetic when it comes to proving the truth. Can you retrieve them?" "There's not enough time. The workshop is 40 minutes from here." Attorney Robert Miller fell silent, thinking. Then he picked up his phone. "Give me the address. I'll send my intern to get them." As Michael relayed the address, Judge Richard Thompson was in his chambers, reviewing the documents submitted by Jessica. There was something that didn't add up. The dates, the amounts, everything seemed too perfect, almost artificial. He picked up the phone and called the court clerk's office. "Deborah, please bring me the case history involving a certain Nathan Cooper. Anything from the last 5 years." "Yes, Your Honor. I'll take care of it right away." Richard Thompson had seen many things in his 38 years as a judge. He knew how to recognize patterns, and that man in the yellow suit had a pattern written all over his demeanor. 15 minutes later, everyone was back in the room. Jessica seemed more confident, Nathan was still smiling, and Michael maintained that air of defeat. "Well," the judge began, "before we proceed, I would like to clarify a few points. Ms. Jessica, you stated that you spent 15,000 reais on home renovations in May 2022. Can you detail exactly what was done?" Jessica blinked, surprised by the specific question. "Well, it was a general renovation, painting, some roof repairs, floor replacement." "And who did the work?" "A company I hired." "Is the company's name on the receipt?" Jessica picked up the folder and searched for the document. "It's here. Jackson Home Renovations, LLC. The judge noted something. "And the 10,000 reais in furniture. Where was it purchased?" "At various stores." Jessica began to feel uncomfortable with the questions. "I don't remember all of them. But do you have the receipts?" "Of course. It's all in the folder." The judge took some of the receipts and examined them carefully. Then he looked at Nathan. "Mr. Nathan Cooper, correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Nathan replied with that confident smile. "What is your profession?" Nathan hesitated for a fraction of a second. "Consultant. I work as an investment consultant." "How long have you known Miss Jessica?" "About 6 months." "And do you live together?" "Not yet. But we plan to, as soon as everything is settled." The judge nodded slowly, as if processing the information. Then he looked at Michael. "Mr. Michael, would you like to comment on the documents presented?" Michael looked at attorney Robert Miller, who encouraged him with his eyes. "Your Honor, that renovation she mentioned, I did most of the work myself. I only hired a helper for 2 days for the roof. We didn't spend 15,000 reais, we spent maybe 3,000. Jessica stood up abruptly. "That's a lie. I have the receipt." "Please sit down," the judge said calmly. "Mr. Michael, can you prove what you're saying?" "I have photos. I took photos of the whole process because I wanted to show the kids. They should be on my old phone, which I still have stored." The judge made another note. "And what about the furniture?" "We bought used furniture from a neighbor who was moving. We paid 2,000 reais, not 10. Jessica knows this." "He's making it up." Jessica was visibly agitated. "Why would I lie about that?" Attorney Robert Miller stood up. "Your Honor, my client is not making anything up, and if you examine the receipts presented carefully, you will notice some inconsistencies in the dates and amounts." The judge picked up the documents again and studied them more closely. Jessica began to sweat. She had been so careful, or so she thought. "Your Honor, may I see the receipts?" asked Attorney Sarah Mitchell, approaching the judge's desk. Richard Thompson showed one of the documents. "This receipt here, for example. The date says May 2022, but the paper looks too new. And look, the company stamp is smudged exactly on the tax ID number." Jessica felt her heart race. "It must have been printed poorly," she tried to explain. "And this other one," the judge continued. "The furniture store mentioned here closed in 2021. I know because my wife used to shop there." Silence filled the room. Nathan stopped smiling. Jessica opened and closed her mouth, trying to find words. "Your Honor, there must be some mistake," said Attorney Sarah Mitchell, herself confused. "My client provided me with these documents." "There might be a mistake, yes," the judge agreed, "but I need to investigate further. Therefore, I'm postponing the continuation of this hearing. I will request a verification of the submitted documents." "But, Your Honor," Jessica protested. "There's nothing to discuss," the judge was firm. "Everyone must remain available. We'll reconvene in 2 hours." As everyone began to leave, Nathan pulled Jessica by the arm. "What did you do?" he whispered, his voice no longer gentle. I exaggerated the numbers a bit." Jessica felt tears in her eyes. "It was to help us." "Help? You might have ruined everything." Jessica then saw for the first time genuine anger in his eyes. He wasn't the same kind person she had met at the salon. Michael left the room without looking back, but his heart was racing. Was it possible the judge had noticed? Was it possible there was justice? In his chambers, Judge Richard was reading Nathan Cooper's background that his assistant had brought, and what he saw there made him increasingly worried. Nathan Cooper had a history. 3 divorce cases in the last 4 years, always involving married women, always present at the hearings. In one of the cases, he had even gotten a portion of the settlement, claiming he had financially assisted the woman during the process. "Deborah," called the judge, "bring me the history of Jackson Home Renovations LLC as well. I want to know if it actually existed and when it ceased operations." "Yes, sir." Richard had a bad feeling about this case. It wasn't just an ordinary divorce. There was something more there, something that smelled of manipulation and opportunism. Outside, Michael sat on a bench in the hallway, his head in his hands. Attorney Robert Miller was on the phone, speaking with the intern who had gone to fetch the notebook. "How long?" asked the lawyer. "Okay, bring it as soon as you arrive." "Did he get it?" Michael lifted his face. "He's on his way. Should be here in an hour." Michael closed his eyes. In that notebook were recorded 12 years of attempts. He had started writing when he noticed Jessica was drifting away around 2013. He noted every affectionate gesture he made, every attempt at dialogue, every gift given, every planned surprise. Was it pathetic? Maybe. But it was real. It was proof that he had tried. Jessica was in the restroom looking at herself in the mirror. Her reflection frightened her. She looked tired, aged. The wrinkles around her eyes were more pronounced. The makeup no longer hid the exhaustion. When had that happened? When had she become this person willing to lie in court? The restroom door opened, and an elderly woman, a cleaning staff member, entered. She smiled kindly at Jessica. "Are you all right, dear? You look distressed." Jessica felt like pouring her heart out, telling everything to that stranger, but she just shook her head. "I'm fine. Just nervous." "Hearing day is never easy," said the woman, starting to clean the sinks. "I've worked here for 25 years. I've seen many people pass through that door." "And what would you tell me?" Jessica asked impulsively. "If you could give some advice?" The woman stopped and looked at her. "The truth always wins, my child, always. It might take time, but it wins." The words kept echoing in Jessica's mind as she returned to the hallway. Nathan was leaning against the wall, typing something on his phone. He didn't even look at her when she approached. "Leo," called Jessica. "What?" he replied, without taking his eyes off his phone. "Are you mad at me?" "I'm not mad," he sighed, finally looking at her. "Just worried. You should have been more careful." "I was careful. I spent months organizing everything." "Apparently not careful enough." His tone was different, cold. Jessica felt a tightening in her chest. "Leo, I did this for us, to have a better future." "I know." He softened a bit. "Sorry, I'm stressed. Everything will work out, you'll see." But when he looked back at his phone, Jessica saw something that chilled her. He was in a dating app conversation, responding to messages from another woman. "Leo," she began, but he quickly locked the screen. "It was just a friend," he said quickly. "Relax." Jessica felt the world spinning. Everything she had built up in her mind over the past 6 months was beginning to crumble. The cleaning woman's words came back. The truth always wins. Mr. Stanley, the employee who had overheard Nathan on the phone earlier, was now talking with Judge Richard Thompson in his office. "Doctor, I don't know if I should get involved," said Stanley, clearly uncomfortable. "But I heard that young man in yellow talking on the phone. He said something about the woman being financially settled in a few weeks, and that then he'd see what to do." The judge nodded gravely. "Thank you, Stanley. This confirms what I suspected." "Do you think he's using her?" "I think so, and it's not the first time. His history shows a very clear pattern." "Poor woman," Stanley sighed. "Sometimes we make wrong choices when we're hurt." "True," agreed the judge. "But lying in court has consequences. I'll have to be firm in this sentence, even understanding her pain." When there were 15 minutes left before the hearing resumed, Attorney Robert Miller's intern came running with Michael's notebook. It was a simple notebook with a black cover, already worn by time. "I got it, Attorney Miller." The young man handed over the notebook, panting. Michael took the notebook with trembling hands. There was his life, his efforts, his pain recorded page by page. "Can I present this?" he asked the attorney. "We'll try. It's the most honest evidence we have." When everyone returned to the room, the tension was palpable. Jessica was pale, Nathan restless, and Michael held the notebook as if it were his most precious possession. The judge entered and everyone stood up. Richard Thompson now had a severe expression. "Well, let's get to the facts," he began. "I requested a quick verification of the documents presented by Mrs. Jessica. Jackson Home Renovations LLC was declared bankrupt in April 2022, 1 month before the supposed renovation. The receipt stamps are fake." Jessica closed her eyes, feeling the floor disappear beneath her feet. "As for the furniture store, as I said, it closed in 2021. The receipts are forged." "Your Honor, I can explain." Jessica tried to stand up, but her legs were shaking. "You will have your chance," said the judge. "But first, I'd like to ask Mr. Nathan Cooper some questions." Nathan straightened up in his chair, his confident smile no longer so firm. "Mr. Cooper, you stated that you work as an investment consultant. Can you tell me the name of the company?" "I work as an independent contractor." "Independent contractor? And do you have professional registration?" "Well, not exactly. It's more informal." "I see." The judge flipped through some papers. "Have you been involved in other divorce proceedings?" Nathan paled. "I don't remember." "Let me refresh your memory. Case number 2021.34Tiang678. Case number 2022.098.234. Case number 2023.005.892. In all of them, you appear as the partner of the party filing for divorce. In one of them, he even managed to benefit financially. Jessica turned to Nathan, her eyes wide. Leo, what is he talking about? Nathan didn't answer, just stared at the floor. That's not true, he finally murmured. No? The judge picked up a folder. I have copies of all the cases here. In 2 of them, the women dropped the charges after discovering you were involved with other people at the same time. The silence in the room was deafening. Jessica felt her stomach churn, the room spinning. Everything she had believed in, everything she had lied for was a sham. But He told me he loved me, Jessica whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. Mrs. Wilson, the judge spoke more gently now. I understand you may have been manipulated, but that doesn't justify submitting false documents to the court. That's a crime. Crime. The word echoed in Jessica's head. She had committed a crime. For Nathan. For that man who was now looking at the door as if he wanted to run. Your Honor, I can explain. Nathan stood up. It's not what you're thinking. Then what is it, Mr. Cooper? We truly loved each other. The other times were different. Mr. Cooper, in this room, we deal with facts, not empty words. And the fact is that you have a history of getting close to women going through divorce, probably seeking financial benefits. That's absurd. Is it? Then explain to me why 15 minutes ago you were overheard by a court employee saying on the phone that in a few weeks Mrs. Wilson would be financially settled and that you would see what to do afterward. Jessica felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. The cleaning lady's words came back once again. The truth always wins. Nathan opened and closed his mouth several times, unable to form a coherent sentence. Finally, he simply sat down, defeated. Mr. Cooper, I'm going to give you a choice, said the judge, his voice firm. You can leave now and prevent me from initiating proceedings against you for attempted fraud, or you can stay here and face the consequences. Nathan looked at Jessica, who was staring at him with a mix of pain and anger. He then stood up and, without saying a word, left the room. Jessica watched him go, feeling her world completely crumble. 23 years of marriage thrown away for 6 months of illusion, and now she was there, exposed, humiliated, alone. Mrs. Wilson, the judge continued now in a softer tone, do you want to tell me what really happened? Jessica took a deep breath, tears finally escaping. I just wanted to feel important again, she said, her voice breaking. For years I felt invisible. Michael worked all the time. The kids grew up and didn't need me anymore. I felt old, useless. Michael heard that and felt his heart tighten. He never knew she felt that way. When I met Nathan, he made me feel young again. He said I was beautiful, that I was special. I believed him. He suggested I document everything for the divorce, said it was my right to have more. I just exaggerated some amounts. I never thought I was committing a crime. But you knew you were lying, said the judge, not as an accusation, but as a fact. I knew, Jessica admitted, crying openly now. I knew, and now I've lost everything. My husband, my dignity, maybe even my children. Mrs. Wilson, I'll be honest with you. What you did is serious. Submitting false documents to the court can result in criminal charges. However, he paused, I will consider that you were a victim of manipulation and are showing genuine remorse. Jessica lifted her face, a spark of hope in her eyes. But there are conditions, the judge continued. You must withdraw all claims based on false documents. We will make a fair division of assets, based only on genuine and verifiable documents. I accept, Jessica said quickly. I accept everything. The judge then looked at Michael. Mr. Michael, have you brought anything you would like to present? Michael looked at the notebook in his hands. For a moment he thought about not showing it, to spare Jessica further humiliation, but then he thought of Brandon and Emily, how all of this was affecting them. They deserved to know the truth. Yes, Your Honor. Michael passed the notebook to the officer, who took it to the judge. Richard Thompson opened the notebook and began to read. His eyebrows rose as he turned the pages. Mr. Michael, how long have you been keeping this record? 12 years, Your Honor, since I realized my marriage was in trouble. The judge read some excerpts aloud. March 15, 2013, I tried to plan a surprise picnic for Jessica. I took her to the park where we met. She said she was tired and wanted to go home. June 22, 2013, I bought flowers and a gift for our wedding anniversary. She thanked me but didn't seem happy. December 10, 2014, I suggested a trip for just the two of us. She refused, saying she couldn't leave the salon. The judge continued reading, page after page, each entry a small stab in the heart of those listening. Jessica cried silently, recognizing every moment, every attempt she had ignored. August 5, 2018. I brought her coffee in bed. She said she was on a diet and threw it away. February 13, 2020. I tried to hold her hand at the movies. She pulled away, saying it was too warm. November 28, 2023. I found messages on her phone. My heart broke, but I said nothing. I still have hope. When the judge stopped reading, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even attorney Sarah Mitchell, Jessica's lawyer, was visibly shaken. Mr. Michael, said the judge, his voice heavy with emotion, this is one of the most honest and painful documents I have ever seen in my career. Do you see, Mrs. Jessica? While you were preparing false documents, your husband was documenting real attempts to save the marriage. Jessica couldn't stop crying. Michael, I didn't know. I didn't realize how hard you were trying. How could you not realize? Michael finally exploded, his own tears falling. How could you not see? I was there every day trying to show you I loved you. But nothing was enough. Nothing was ever enough. I was lost, Jessica shouted back. I felt suffocated in that marriage. You were always working, always absent. When you were home, you were too tired to really see me. Absent. I was building a life for us. Every extra hour at the shop was for you, for our children. But I didn't want material things. I wanted attention. I wanted to be seen. The judge gently banged the gavel. Please, everyone. I see there is a lot of pain here, many accumulated misunderstandings. I suggest that, before any final decision, you both undergo therapy, individual and couples therapy. Couples therapy? Jessica laughed bitterly. There is no couple anymore, Your Honor. Perhaps not, the judge agreed, but there are two people who need to close this chapter in a healthy way, mainly because of the children. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The judge continued. I will determine the following. The assets will be divided equitably, considering the actual contribution of both throughout the marriage. The shop remains with Mr. Michael, but Mrs. Jessica will be entitled to 20% of the net profits for the next 5 years, as recognition for the years dedicated to the marriage. The salon remains entirely with Mrs. Jessica. The house where they lived will be sold and the proceeds divided equally. As for the lifelong alimony, it has been denied. Mrs. Jessica has her own business and is able to work. Jessica just nodded her head without the strength to argue. Furthermore, the judge continued, considering the attempted fraud, I will impose an alternative sentence. Mrs. Jessica must perform 200 hours of community service and attend mandatory therapy sessions for 6 months. I accept, Jessica whispered. And both of you will attend at least 10 joint therapy sessions for a healthy closure of this relationship, for the children, if not for yourselves. Nathan and Jessica looked at each other for the first time in that hearing. They truly looked at each other, without anger, without accusations. Just two broken human beings trying to understand how they had gotten there. The hearing ended, and everyone began to leave. Nathan stayed behind, slowly putting away his notebook. Jessica also took her time leaving, as if she didn't know where to go. In the hallway, they stood before each other for a few seconds. Nathan, Jessica began, her voice hoarse from so much crying. I'm sorry for everything. Nathan took a deep breath. I'm sorry too. I'm sorry I didn't notice your pain. I'm sorry I buried myself in work. I'm sorry we wasted so many years in silence. You read that notebook for everyone to hear, she said, without accusation in her voice, just stating a fact. "I needed you to know," Nathan explained. "I needed you to see that I tried, not because I want your pity, but because our children need to know that it wasn't a lack of love that destroyed our family." Jessica nodded, fresh tears falling. "Brandon and Emily, they're going to hate me, aren't they?" "I don't know," Nathan was honest. "They're confused, hurt, but they're our children. With time and truth, maybe we can rebuild that." "And you?" Jessica asked softly. "Do you hate me?" Nathan thought for a long moment. "No, I don't hate you, Jessica. I'm tired, hurt, disappointed. But I don't hate you. You're the mother of my children. For 23 years you were my partner. That doesn't just go away." Jessica sobbed and impulsively hugged Nathan. He stiffened for a second, but then returned the hug. There, in that cold courthouse hallway, two broken hearts allowed themselves one last moment of connection before going their separate ways. When they let go, Jessica wiped her face. "Leonardo," she said the name with bitterness. "I was so stupid." "You were vulnerable," Nathan said with a generosity he didn't even know he had. "He knew that and used it against you. It doesn't justify what I did. The fake documents, the public humiliation. No, it doesn't justify, but it explains. And now you'll have to face the consequences and learn from it." Jessica nodded, knowing he was right. "Nathan, about the couples therapy. Are you really going?" "I am. The judge ordered it, but even if he hadn't, I would go. Not for us as a couple, but for us as parents. Brandon and Emily need to see that we can be civilized adults about this." "I'll go too," Jessica promised, "and I'll do the 200 hours of community service. I'll do everything I need to fix what I destroyed." They said goodbye and each went their separate ways. Nathan went straight to the workshop, needing the smell of grease and metal, needing to work with his hands to process everything that had happened. Jessica went home, the house that would soon be sold. She walked in and looked around, seeing decades of memories in every corner. There was the mark on the doorframe where they measured the children's height. There was the stain on the couch from when Emily spilled grape juice. There was the wedding photo, dusty on the shelf. She picked up the photo and looked at that younger version of herself, so full of dreams, so in love. What had happened to that girl? The phone rang. It was Brandon. "Mom," his voice was cold. "Emily called me. She found out about the hearing." "Son, I can explain..." "Explain what?" he interrupted. "That you brought that guy to court? That you lied? That you humiliated Dad in front of everyone? It wasn't like that." "Yes, it was. Emily has been crying for an hour, and I'm trying to understand how my mother turned into this person." His words were like knives in Jessica's heart. "Brandon, please, let me talk." "Talk about what, Mom? Do you have any idea what we went through? Seeing you with that guy, seeing Dad suffer in silence? We didn't know whose side to take." "You didn't need to choose sides." "Yes, we did. And we chose Dad because he didn't force us to choose. He never spoke badly of you, even when we could see he was destroyed." Jessica collapsed on the floor, the phone still to her ear. "Son, I made mistakes, many mistakes. But I'm still your mother." "Yeah." Brandon's voice was choked up now. "You're my mother, but I don't know who this woman is, who would do what you did. Give me a chance to fix this, please." There was a long silence on the other end. "I need time, Mum. We need time." "How much time?" "I don't know. But right now I can't see you. I can't even talk properly. I'm sorry." He hung up. Jessica stayed there on the living room floor, holding the phone, crying like she hadn't cried in years. She had lost everything. Her husband, her children, her dignity, her peace. And for what? For a man who used her, who didn't even bother to look back when he left the courthouse. That night Michael was in the workshop, working on an old engine. His hands moved automatically, but his mind was far away. He thought of Jessica, the Jessica from 25 years ago, the woman he had fallen in love with. Where had she gone? When had they stopped truly seeing each other? He remembered when Jessica got pregnant with Brandon. She was radiant, touching her belly all the time, smiling at everything. Michael was working double shifts back then, wanting to give her and the baby the best. But maybe, in that effort to provide, he had forgotten to be present. When Emily was born 2 years later, things got harder. 2 small children, little money, a lot of stress. Jessica complained that he was never home. He said he was working for them. She replied that she didn't want money, she wanted attention. He thought she was being irrational. Looking back now, he saw how much they had failed to communicate. They talked, but they didn't listen. They lived in the same house, but in separate worlds. Brandon had called him after speaking with his mother. "Dad, are you okay?" "I am, son. Tired, but I am." "Why did you never tell us about the attempts to save the marriage?" Michael sighed. "Because I didn't want you to choose sides. I didn't want you to see your mother as a villain." "But she was a villain, Dad. She humiliated you." "She was a lost person who made wrong decisions," Michael corrected gently. "She's not a villain, Brandon. She's human. We all are." "You're too good, Dad. After everything, you still defend her." "I'm not defending what she did, but I understand that pain makes people act in strange ways. Your mother was suffering and didn't know how to deal with it in a healthy way. And you, weren't you suffering?" "I was, a lot. But everyone deals with it differently. I buried myself in work. She buried herself in an illusion. We were both wrong." "When did you get so wise?" Brandon asked, a slight note of humor in his voice. "When I found myself alone in a courtroom with a notebook full of pain," Michael admitted. "I looked at those pages and saw a desperate man trying to save something that might have been lost for years. It was sad and liberating at the same time." "Dad, are you going to be okay?" "I will, son. It will hurt for a while, but I'll be okay. And your mother will be too. We'll both learn from this and move on." "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, Brandon. Very much." When he hung up, Michael allowed himself to cry. Not out of despair, but release. 23 years of marriage had ended terribly, but there was also a strange sense of relief. He no longer needed to pretend, no longer needed to try to save something that was already dead. The next few months were difficult for both of them. Jessica started her community service hours at a senior home. At first, she did the bare minimum, just fulfilling the obligation. But gradually something changed. There was an elderly lady there, Ms. Eleanor, who was 82 years old and had a sharp tongue. One day, while Jessica was helping her with lunch, the old woman asked, "Why are you here, girl? What did you do?" Jessica hesitated, but then decided to be honest. "I lied in court, during my divorce." Ms. Eleanor let out a hoarse laugh. At least it was creative. Most people here did more boring things. "Did you also do community service?" 50 years ago, yes." Ms. Eleanor nodded. "I forged a document to get a job. I was a secretary, desperately needed the money. They caught me." "And what happened?" "I worked at a hospital for a year as part of my sentence. That's where I met my husband. He was a doctor. I was the criminal doing community service." She laughed again. "We stayed married for 48 years. "How could he trust you, knowing you had lied?" Ms. Eleanor became serious. "Because he looked beyond the mistake. He saw the desperate woman who made a wrong decision, and he also saw the woman who faced the consequences and tried to be better." "Did you really change after that?" "I changed, because I learned that lying only brings more problems. The truth might hurt at the moment, but the lie hurts forever." Jessica thought about those words for days. The truth might hurt at the moment, but the lie hurts forever. She was living that pain now. In individual therapy sessions, Jessica was beginning to understand the roots of her choices. The therapist, Dr. Margaret, was a woman in her 60s, insightful and direct. "Jessica, when did you start feeling invisible?" Jessica thought. "I think when the kids grew up. They didn't need me in the same way anymore. Suddenly I looked in the mirror and saw a woman in her 40s with no clear purpose." "And the beauty salon?" "The salon was mine, but it wasn't enough. I saw younger women coming in, full of energy, and I felt outdated." "And Michael?" "Michael was always working. When he got home, he was exhausted. We stopped talking, stopped really seeing each other. We became two people sharing a house, nothing more." "Did you ever think about talking to him about this?" "I tried at first, but he didn't understand. He said he was working for us, that I should be grateful. I didn't want gratitude. I wanted presence. And then Nathan appeared. Jessica closed her eyes. Nathan made me feel seen again. He asked how my day was, listened to my stories, laughed at my jokes. It was everything I wanted Michael to be. Was it real? I thought so. Tears streamed down Jessica's face. But now I see it was just manipulation. He knew exactly what to say, how to act. And I swallowed it all because I was starving for attention. Do you blame yourself for being deceived? I blame myself for many things. For being deceived, for lying in court, for humiliating Michael, for losing my children. Your children aren't lost, Dr. Margaret said gently. They're processing. Give them time. What if they don't forgive me? Then you'll have to live with the consequences of your choices. But something tells me they will forgive you eventually. Because forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about moving forward without carrying the weight of resentment. Meanwhile, Michael was also in therapy. His therapist, Dr. Stephen, was direct. Michael, do you see yourself as the victim in this story? I don't know, Michael admitted. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Explain. I was a victim of betrayal, lies, public humiliation. But I also failed as a husband. I buried myself in work because it was easier than dealing with the problems at home. Were you running away? I was. Every time Jessica tried to talk about our marriage, I changed the subject or said I was tired. I didn't want to face the truth that we were drifting apart. And now? Now I see that my silence contributed to the disaster. If I had had the courage to speak up, to seek help earlier, maybe things would be different. Do you think you still love Jessica? Michael was silent for a long time. I love the memory of her. I love the mother of my children. But the Jessica of today, I don't know. I don't know who she is anymore, and she doesn't know who I am anymore. You both need to relearn that, in the joint sessions. It's going to be hard. It is, but necessary, not to rekindle the marriage, but to close the cycle in a healthy way. The joint sessions were tense at first. Michael and Jessica sat on opposite sides of the room, barely looking at each other. Dr. Margaret conducted the sessions with patience. Let's establish some ground rules, she began in the first session. Here you can express your pain, but respectfully. No yelling, cruel accusations, or personal attacks. The goal is not to hurt, but to heal. In the third session, Dr. Margaret asked each to talk about a happy moment from the marriage. Jessica went first. When Brandon was born, she said, her voice soft. Michael stayed all night at the hospital. When they finally brought the baby in, I saw the look in his eyes. It was pure love. In that moment, I knew he would be a good father. Michael felt a lump in his throat. Our 5th wedding anniversary, he shared. I didn't have much money, but I organized a simple picnic. Jessica arrived and saw the checkered blanket, the sandwiches, the juice in jars. She laughed and said it was perfect. We stayed there for hours just talking, dreaming about the future. Both had tears in their eyes now. When did we stop dreaming together? Jessica asked, more to herself. When dreams turned into obligations, Michael answered. When life became a to-do list and we forgot to just be together. In the 5th session, Dr. Margaret asked, if you could go back in time, what would you do differently? Jessica thought carefully. I would have communicated my needs clearly, not in an accusatory way, but honestly. I would have said, Michael, I feel alone, instead of holding on to the resentment. And you, Michael? I would have listened. I would have really listened, not just waited for my turn to speak. And I would have prioritized our marriage as much as I prioritized the shop. Why didn't you do that? Fear. They both answered at the same time, surprised by the synchronicity. Fear of what? The therapist insisted. Fear of admitting I wasn't happy, Jessica said. Because admitting that would mean doing something about it, and I didn't know what. Fear of not being enough, Michael added. If I couldn't provide, be a good husband, a good father, then who was I? That session was a turning point. For the first time in years, they saw each other as people, not as enemies or strangers, but as two imperfect human beings trying their best and failing miserably. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing, while therapy continued, life went on. The house was put up for sale. Brandon and Emily went there to pick up their things, and it was an emotionally charged day. Emily cried when she saw her empty room. "It feels like our childhood is being erased," she told her brother. "It's not being erased." Brandon put his arm around her shoulders. "It's stored here." He pointed to his heart. "No one can take that away from us." Jessica was in the kitchen packing dishes when Emily entered. "Mom?" Her voice was hesitant. "Sweetheart." Jessica turned quickly, her eyes already moist. There was a moment of uncomfortable silence. Then Emily spoke. "I'm trying to understand. Why did you do that?" "Because I was lost," Jessica answered honestly. "Because I felt invisible, and when someone made me feel seen again, I lost my mind. You humiliated Dad in front of everyone. I know, and that will haunt me for the rest of my life. He didn't deserve that." "No, he didn't. Your father is a good man. I just didn't know how to appreciate that." Emily wiped the tears from her face. "I love you, Mom, but I'm hurt. Very hurt. I know, sweetheart, and you have every right to be. I don't expect immediate forgiveness. I just hope that with time you can give me a chance to be a better mother. I need time. Take all the time you need." They hugged briefly before Emily left the kitchen. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a start. Michael had moved to a small apartment near the workshop. It was simple, just one bedroom and a living room, but it was his. He didn't need much. One night, he was looking at old photos on his phone when he came across one of Jessica. It was from 20 years ago. She was in the garden, laughing at something he had said. She was so beautiful, so full of life. What had he done to help kill that vitality? Because he had his share of the blame, that he knew now. He sent the photo to Jessica, without text, just the photo. 15 minutes later, she replied, "I remember that day. You had tried to plant tomatoes and they grew all crooked. I laughed so hard." Michael smiled as he read. He replied, "You said they were the most beautiful tomatoes you had ever seen, even if they were crooked." They were, because they were made by you. They texted for an hour, reminiscing about good times. It wasn't romantic. It was more like two old friends reconnecting. And in a way it was healing. At the shelter where Jessica was doing her community service, Ms. Eleanor was getting weaker. The doctors said it was a matter of time. Jessica had grown fond of the elderly woman in recent months. "Ms. Eleanor," Jessica sat by the bed, "you need to rest." "I'll rest when I'm gone," the elderly woman smiled weakly. "For now I want to talk." "About what?" "About you. Have you forgiven yourself?" Jessica thought. "I'm trying. It's hard." "Yes, but necessary. You can't live the rest of your life carrying that weight." "How did you forgive yourself for the lie you told when you were young?" "It wasn't easy. It took years. But I understood that one mistake doesn't define an entire life. I made a mistake, paid for it, learned from it, and moved on." "What if I can't move on?" "You will, because you're stronger than you think. I see that in you." "I don't feel strong." "No one does when they're at rock bottom." Ms. Eleanor held Jessica's hand. "But that's where we start climbing from, Ms." Eleanor passed away 3 days later, sleeping peacefully. Jessica cried when she found out, but also felt gratitude. That lady had given her something precious: perspective. In the 9th joint therapy session, Dr. Margaret made a proposal. "I want you both to write letters to each other. Not to read now, but for a year from now. Write what you feel today, what you hope for the future, what you'd like to say but can't yet." Both agreed. They spent a week writing those letters. Michael wrote, "Jessica, if you're reading this, it means a year has passed since that terrible day in court. I hope you're well. I hope you found peace with yourself. I spent a lot of time angry, in pain, resentful. But I'm learning to let that go. Not for you, but for me. Because carrying all this weight is killing me inside. I understand now that we both failed. I failed to be present, to listen, to see your pain. You failed to communicate, to trust. To be honest, we both built walls instead of bridges. Walls. I don't know if there will still be friendship between us a year from now, but I hope there will be respect. I hope we can be in the same room without pain, that we can see our children happy without our presence being uncomfortable. Thank you for the good years, because there were good years, even if it's hard to remember now. Thank you for giving me Brandon and Emily, the greatest gifts of my life. I hope you find what you're looking for. I hope you look in the mirror and see the amazing woman I saw 25 years ago. She's still there. She just needed to find herself again. Take care, Michael, Jessica wrote. Michael, I don't know how to start this letter. There's so much I'd like to say. So much I'd like to undo. I apologized to you before, but I don't know if you really heard how sincere I was being, so I'll say it again. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for betraying you, for lying, for humiliating you, for throwing away 23 years as if they meant nothing. Because they did. They meant everything. I was lost, Michael. I looked in the mirror and saw an old, ugly, worthless woman, and when Nathan appeared, I saw a chance to feel young again. But it was an illusion. He didn't want me. He wanted what I could give him. You always wanted me. I see that now in the pages of that notebook you read in court. Every line was proof of your love, and I wasted it all. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to read this letter, but I need to get out that I recognize my guilt. I made terrible choices and now I'm living with the consequences. If a year from now we can talk civilly, be in the same room without pain, that will be more than I deserve. Thank you for not destroying my relationship with our children. You could have done that. You could have turned them completely against me. But you didn't. That shows the man you are. I hope you find happiness, Michael. You deserve that, and so much more. With regret and gratitude, Jessica. They sealed the letters and gave them to Dr. Margaret, who would keep them for a year. The 10th and final joint session was different. There was less tension in the air, more acceptance. How do you feel about ending therapy? Asked Dr. Margaret. Relieved in a way, Michael admitted, but also grateful. I learned a lot about myself here. Scared, Jessica confessed. These sessions were my safe harbor. Now, I'll have to face the world alone. You're not alone, Dr. Margaret corrected gently. You have your children, your friends, your work, and you have yourself, which is the most important company. And about the divorce, Michael asked. Is it finalized? Yes, replied Dr. Margaret. The papers were signed last week. You are now legally divorced. There was a heavy silence. It was real now. 23 years of marriage officially over. How do you feel about that? The therapist asked. Sad, Michael said simply. Even knowing it was inevitable, it's still sad. Me too, Jessica agreed. It's the end of an era, the end of what could have been. But it's also the beginning of something new, Dr. Margaret reminded them. You now have the chance to rebuild your lives individually, to discover who you are outside of marriage. And the children, Jessica asked. What do we do about them? Talk, Michael said. Really talk this time. No secrets, no games, just honesty. Jessica nodded. We can do that. We can be better parents even if we're no longer married. You can, the therapist agreed. And you will, because you're both committed to Brandon and Emily's well-being. The session ended with a handshake between Michael and Jessica. It wasn't a hug, it wasn't a kiss, but it was a mutual acknowledgement that they had survived the worst and could now move forward. In the following months, things slowly found a new normal. The house was sold and the money divided. Michael invested his share in the auto shop, expanding the business. Jessica used hers to renovate the salon and hire more employees. Brandon and Emily gradually began rebuilding their relationship with their mother. It wasn't easy or quick, but it happened. Occasional dinners, short phone calls, text messages, small steps toward healing. One day, 6 months after the final divorce, Brandon organized a lunch. He invited both parents without telling either about the other. When Michael and Jessica arrived at the restaurant and saw each other, there was a moment of tension. Brandon planned this, Michael said. Apparently, Jessica agreed. "We want to talk to you." Emily appeared behind them. "Please come in." Inside the restaurant, at a reserved table, Brandon and Emily were waiting. "Sit down," Brandon requested. Michael and Jessica complied, sitting on opposite sides of the table. "We brought you here because we need to say some things," Emily began. "And we need both of you to listen." "We're listening," said Jessica. "These past months have been the worst of our lives," Emily continued. "Watching you two destroy each other, watching our family fall apart, it was horrible. But we also learned something. Brandon took over. We learned that marriages end, but families don't have to end." "You're no longer husband and wife," said Emily. "But you're our parents, and you always will be. And we need you to parent together in a healthy way. That's what we're trying to do," Michael said softly. "We know," Brandon agreed, "and we're proud of you for that. But we need more. We need you to come to my wedding next year and be in the same room without discomfort. We need you to meet our future children without it being awkward." Michael looked at Jessica across the table. She was crying silently. "You're getting married?" Jessica asked, her voice full of emotion. "I am," Brandon smiled. "I proposed to Kimberly last week." She said yes. "Son, that's wonderful." Michael stood up and hugged his son. Jessica joined the hug, and for a moment the three stood there, a broken family trying to heal. "We'll make it work," Michael said, looking at Jessica. "For them, for us, we'll make it work." "We will," Jessica agreed. Emily smiled with relief. "There's one more thing," she said. "I also have a boyfriend, and I'd like to introduce him to you. Together, if possible." "Of course," Michael and Jessica said in unison. The lunch continued with more lightness now. They talked about wedding plans, about Emily's boyfriend, about how the auto shop and salon were doing. It wasn't perfect, there were awkward moments, but it was real. It was a beginning. When they finished, Michael offered Jessica a ride to the salon. In the car, there was a comfortable silence. "Thank you," Jessica said suddenly. "For what?" "For not giving up. For coming today, even knowing I would be here. Our children deserve this," Michael said. "They deserve parents who can be together without drama." "You were always the better one of us two," Jessica said quietly. "Don't say that," Michael shook his head. "Neither of us was better or worse. We were just two imperfect people who didn't know how to handle their problems." They arrived at the venue. Before getting out of the car, Jessica turned to Michael. "Michael, do you think we'll ever be able to be friends? Really?" Michael thought carefully. "I don't know, maybe. Time will tell, but what I do know is that we'll always be connected through our children, and we'll make it work, whether as friends or simply as respectful co-parents." "That's enough for me." Jessica opened the door. "For now, it's enough." She got out of the car and waved before entering the venue. Michael stayed there for a moment, watching her go in, feeling a mix of melancholy and hope. A year passed. Brandon's wedding was scheduled for a fall Saturday. It was a beautiful day, sunny but not too hot. Michael was nervous as he got ready. It would be the first time he and Jessica would be together at a social event since the divorce. They had occasionally seen each other for practical matters, but this was different. This was a family event. He arrived early at the church. Jessica was already there, talking with some relatives. She wore a simple but elegant blue dress. When she saw him, she waved. He waved back. "Dad!" Brandon appeared, radiant in an impeccable suit. "Are you ready?" "More than ready." Michael hugged his son. "I'm so proud of you." "Thank you, Dad, for everything, for always being my safe harbor." "I always will be," Michael promised. The ceremony was beautiful. When Brandon and Kimberly exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the church. Michael looked at Jessica across the aisle and saw she was crying too. Their eyes met, and for a moment there was mutual understanding. This was their son, the fruit of the love that once existed between them. At the reception, Michael and Jessica were seated at nearby tables, but not the same one. It was a thoughtful consideration from Brandon, giving them space but keeping them included. During the party, there was a moment when the parents of the newlyweds were called to dance. Michael and Jessica looked at each other, hesitant. "Shall we?" Michael extended his hand. "For our children." "For our children," Jessica accepted. They danced a whole song, carefully maintaining a respectful distance. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was simply two parents sharing an important moment in their son's life. "Are you okay?" Michael asked as they danced. "I am," Jessica answered honestly. "It takes time, but I'm learning to live my new life." "Me too. The workshop is going well. I hired 2 new employees." "That's good. The salon is doing better too. I have a loyal clientele now. I'm happy for you." "Thank you. And you? Are you seeing anyone?" Michael hesitated. "I'm meeting people. Nothing serious yet. And you?" "No," Jessica shook her head. "I'm not ready. Maybe I never will be. I need to learn to be okay alone first." Wise decision. The music ended and they separated. It was strange, but not bad. It was a new kind of relationship forming. Something between strangers and former lovers, between enemies and friends. Later that night, when the party was winding down, Emily pulled both parents aside. "Thank you," she said, hugging them both. "Thank you for being here, for being civil, for showing it's possible to move forward with dignity." "There's nothing to thank us for," said Jessica. "It's our duty as parents." "Exactly," Michael agreed. When Michael got home that night, he sat on the couch, exhausted but satisfied. It had been a good day, difficult at times, but good. He thought of Jessica, how she seemed different, more calm, more at peace with herself. There was still sadness in their eyes, but there was also something new, acceptance. Jessica, in her own home, had similar thoughts running through her head. She had survived that day. She had been in the same room as Michael without falling apart, without drama, without sharp pain. There was hope in that. The following month, the anniversary of their final therapy session arrived. As promised, Dr. Margaret sent the letters they had written a year earlier. Michael opened his with trembling hands. As he read Jessica's words, he felt tears in his eyes. She had been so honest, so open about her pain and regret. Jessica read Michael's letter and cried. He had been too generous, too understanding. She didn't deserve it, but she accepted it with gratitude. Both separately decided to keep the letters. They were reminders of how much they had grown in the past year, how much they had learned. Michael started going out more, making new friends, rediscovering hobbies he had abandoned. He joined a weekend soccer team with other men his age. He started attending an advanced mechanics course. Jessica enrolled in painting classes, something she had always wanted to do but never had the courage. She discovered she had talent, that creativity calmed her. She also began volunteering regularly at the nursing home, no longer out of obligation, but by choice. They still saw each other occasionally, mainly at family events. Each encounter became a little easier, a little less painful. 2 years after the divorce, something unexpected happened. Emily had a baby, a beautiful boy named Ethan, and both Michael and Jessica were at the hospital, eager to meet their grandson. When the nurse brought the baby, they both reached out at the same time. They laughed at the synchronized gesture. "You first," the nurse said, handing the baby to Michael. He held the little baby carefully, tears streaming down his face. Jessica stood beside him, also crying. "He's perfect," Michael whispered. "He's our grandson," Jessica said, touching the baby's tiny hand. "Our grandson, Michael." It was a moment of genuine connection, without resentment, without pain. Just two people who had once loved each other, now connected by that new life. In the following months, Michael and Jessica established an arrangement for visiting their grandson. They coordinated schedules, sometimes even visited together when Emily needed help. On one of those days, Emily had to leave urgently and asked both grandparents to stay with Ethan. It was the first time Michael and Jessica had been alone together, outside of therapy, since the divorce. At first it was awkward. They didn't quite know what to say to each other. But then Ethan started crying, and instinctively they both rushed to him. Michael picked up the baby, Jessica warmed the bottle. They worked in sync, like they had years ago with their own children. When Ethan finally fell asleep, they sat on the couch, a respectful space between them. "We were good at this," Jessica said softly, "taking care of babies." "We were," Michael agreed, Brandon and Emily were lucky babies. Except for the part where we destroyed our marriage and traumatized them, Jessica said with bitter humor. They survived, they're fine, better than many children of divorced parents, because you were generous, because you didn't destroy me when you could have. Michael sighed. Jessica, how many times are we going to have this conversation? I didn't want to destroy you, I never did. Even when I was furious, even when I felt betrayed, I didn't want your destruction. Why? I deserved it. No one deserves to be destroyed. And you were still the mother of my children. You were still a person I once loved deeply. That doesn't just go away. Jessica wiped away a tear. Have you found someone? I'm seeing someone. Nothing serious yet, but it's good. Her name is Christine. She's a teacher. And you? No, like I said, I'm still not ready. Maybe I never will be. You will be. When the time is right, it will be. There was a comfortable silence. Nathan, can I ask you a question? Of course. Have you forgiven me? Really? Nathan thought carefully before answering. Yes. It took time. It took therapy. It took a lot of inner work. But yes, I've forgiven you. Not because you asked, but because carrying that weight was holding me back from living. Thank you, Jessica whispered. And you? Have you forgiven yourself? Jessica stayed silent for a long time. I'm trying. Some days are better than others, but I'm trying. Keep trying. You deserve forgiveness, including your own. Emily arrived an hour later and found her parents talking calmly, Ethan sleeping between them in the stroller. Is everything okay here? She asked, surprised by the peaceful scene. It's great, said Nathan, standing up. He was an angel. Thank you both so much. Emily hugged them both. It means a lot to me that you can do this. It's our pleasure, Jessica smiled genuinely. 3 years after the divorce, Nathan and Christine got engaged. He told Brandon and Emily first, who were happy for him. Then, nervously, he called Jessica. Hello? She answered. Hi, Jessica. Do you have a minute? Of course. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. I just wanted to tell you something before you heard it from someone else. Christine and I are engaged. There was a pause. Nathan held his breath. Nathan, that's wonderful. Her voice sounded genuine. I'm really happy for you. Really? You're okay with this? I am. You deserve to be happy. And Christine seems like a great woman. She is, and Jessica, I wanted to invite you to the wedding. I know it's strange, but you're family. You always will be, because of our kids. Jessica felt tears in her eyes. I'll be there. Of course I will. Thank you for inviting me. When they hung up, Jessica sat for a long time processing her feelings. There was a slight tightness in her heart, a twinge of, it could have been us. But genuine happiness for her ex-husband prevailed. He deserved love. He deserved to be happy. Nathan and Christine's wedding was simple and beautiful. Jessica went and stayed discreetly in the back, but she was there. When Nathan saw her, he waved and smiled. She returned it. During the reception, Christine approached Jessica. Jessica, I'm Christine. Hi. Jessica stood up, nervous. It's a pleasure to meet you. The pleasure is mine. Thank you for coming. It means a lot to Nathan. I wouldn't have missed it. He's the father of my children. I'll always want the best for him. You know, Christine said, sitting next to Jessica, Nathan speaks very highly of you. Jessica blinked, surprised. He does. Yes, he does. He says you were both young and made mistakes, but that you're a good person at heart. He says you're rebuilding yourself and that he admires your courage. Jessica felt tears threatening to fall. He's too generous. He's honest, and I want you to know that I don't feel threatened by you. What you had is in the past. I respect that, and I respect you. Thank you, Jessica managed to say. Take good care of him. He deserves it. I will. I promise. That conversation was liberating for Jessica. She left the wedding feeling that finally, truly, that chapter had closed. Nathan was happy, her children were happy, and she, well, she was on the path to happiness. End of story. Now tell me, what did you think of this story? Where are you watching from? Do you think Jessica deserved a second chance after everything she did? And Nathan, was he cowardly or wise to forgive? Leave your opinion in the comments, and if this story touched you in any way, don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other emotional stories. See you next time.